Stop everything you're doing right now, because what Shedeur Sanders just revealed in his post-game press conference is absolutely mind-blowing and has major implications for the future of the Cleveland Browns. This isn't your typical post-game interview, where players give generic, scripted responses and move on. We're talking about raw, emotional, and brutally honest admissions about mental health struggles, personal battles, relationships with coaches, and what could be Sanders' final game playing for Kevin Stefanski. This level of transparency is something we rarely see from professional athletes. It's a kind of vulnerability that gives us a glimpse into what's really going on behind the scenes in an NFL locker room. Sanders didn't just talk about plays and game strategies. He shared his personal struggles with darkness, his need for others to uplift him, his conversations with his head coach that hint at their relationship coming to an end, and his thoughts on what he likes and dislikes in a system. If you're a Browns fan, if you care about the future of this team, or if you just want to understand the reality in Cleveland, you have to hear every word of what Sanders said. This press conference has completely shifted the conversation around this team and its future going into next season. Let's start with the biggest revelation that has everyone talking and speculating about the next moves in Cleveland. When asked about finishing the season with a win for Kevin Stefanski, especially with all the rumors surrounding the coach's future, Sanders' response carried a lot of weight. He said that Stefanski had been real tough, that it had been a good experience, and that he felt he had grown and learned a lot from him. But then came a bombshell. Sanders shared that this week, he and Stefanski had a conversation about just life. They connected on a personal level and started to understand each other better. And here's the part that has everyone convinced this was Sanders' last game playing for Stefanski. Sanders said he wished he and the rest of the team could have gotten more personal this season, implying that the depth of connection he needed just wasn't there for most of the year. Think about what Sanders is saying here. He's opening up about the fact that his relationship with his head coach wasn't as deep or personal as he wanted it to be. Only now, in this final week, did they have meaningful conversations and really begin to understand each other. The way Sanders spoke, the wistful tone, the emphasis on how important this was to him, it all suggests that Sanders knows this chapter is coming to a close. When a quarterback talks about his relationship with his head coach in the past tense, expresses regrets about what could have been, and admits that real understanding only happened at the very end, that's not someone expecting to keep working with that coach. That's someone reflecting on a relationship that's nearing its end, processing the lessons learned, and preparing for what's next. The timing of this revelation is critical to understanding what's happening in Cleveland right now. Rumors about Stefanski's job security have been swirling for weeks. Despite being a former coach of the year and having success earlier in his tenure, Kevin Stefanski has been under tremendous pressure this season as the Browns have struggled to live up to expectations. And now, after the final game of the season, here comes the starting quarterback, essentially confirming that their relationship has been complicated, that he wishes things had been different, and that it's only recently that they've started to really understand each other. If you're reading between the lines, and trust me, everyone in the Browns organization and the NFL is doing just that, Sanders is basically signaling that he's ready for a change. He's ready for a new coach, someone he can connect with from the start, someone whose system fits better with what he sees and what he wants. But before diving deeper into the coaching situation and what it means for the future, we need to focus on the incredibly raw and honest revelation Sanders made about his mental and spiritual state leading up to this game. These admissions provide critical context for everything else that was said. Sanders opened up about facing serious spiritual battles throughout the week, explaining that this internal struggle affected his performance in the first half. He acknowledged that his body language was off, that he didn't look like himself, and that things just weren't clicking the way they usually do. This level of honesty is rare for a professional athlete, especially in a league like the NFL, where showing any vulnerability is often seen as a weakness. Sanders didn't have to share any of this. He could have stuck to the usual post-game narrative, talking about execution or needing to play better. But instead, he chose to be open and authentic about what he was going through. He went even further, discussing how the devil attacks in different ways, through people and circumstances. He said, "This whole year has been a long year with ups and downs and different feelings. And at some point, you have to be able to talk to people and lean on others for support." This is some powerful stuff. Sanders, a young rookie, is being open about the mental health struggles that come with playing in the NFL, constantly under the spotlight, dealing with enormous pressure and high expectations week after week. For him to talk about it so openly shows incredible self-awareness and emotional intelligence, qualities that aren't always present, especially in players so early in their careers. But what's even more striking is how Sanders described the turning point in the game. He explained that at halftime, his close teammates and friends came up to him and told him, "Nah, bro, get back to being you." That simple act of encouragement, those words of support were exactly what he needed. And right after halftime, we saw the transformation. Sanders and the offense got their rhythm back and started to fire on all cylinders. The change in the second half wasn't about a change in strategy or adjustments to the game plan. It was about Sanders getting his mindset right, returning to himself, and having his teammates speak life into him. This was a powerful reminder of the importance of team culture, having a group of people around you who can lift you up when you're down, who can support you when you're struggling, and who can remind you of who you are when you're lost in the moment. Sanders repeatedly emphasized that the victories in this game were mental, not physical. He said they won mentally, that the true challenge wasn't physical adversity, but mental adversity, dealing with the struggles that came when he wasn't seeing the game clearly or when he was slow on his reads. His acknowledgement of these mental hurdles speaks volumes about his maturity, and it adds a whole new layer to what we're seeing from him as a player. The key lesson Sanders took from this game, and from the season as a whole, was his ability to overcome adversity. He feels that the final drive, where he rose to the challenge after struggling earlier, proved that he could conquer mental and emotional hurdles. This gives us a unique insight into how Sanders views his development. He's not judging himself by stats or whether every throw is perfect. Instead, he's evaluating himself based on his ability to bounce back from tough situations, to find his way back when things aren't going right, and to deliver when the stakes are highest. That last drive, where he overcame adversity to seal the win, wasn't just a physical triumph. It was a testament to his growth as a player, especially in the mental and emotional aspects of the game. Now, let's dive into what Sanders revealed about what he's learned this season. His comments are loaded with implications about his future with the Browns, and they give us a glimpse into what he needs to succeed at the next level. When asked what he learned about himself, Sanders' answer was incredibly telling. He said he learned what he likes and what he doesn't like, what he sees well and what he doesn't see well. This isn't just about his own skills or preferences, it's about the system and scheme fit. When a quarterback says he's learned what works for him and what doesn't after a season with a particular coaching staff and offensive system, it's a pretty clear indication that something about the current setup isn't aligning with what he needs. Sanders went on to explain that this season was as much about mental and emotional growth as it was about football. He learned how to manage his feelings, how to handle situations when things are going well and when they're not. He made an insightful point. Even if you're playing, you can still feel disconnected, just like when you're not playing. External circumstances, he said, don't automatically determine your internal state. You have to take control of your own mindset and create your own reality. And for that to happen, you need the right people around you, not just family, but people who can offer honest feedback, speak truth to you, and help you get back on track when you're slipping. This shows a remarkable level of maturity and self-awareness from Sanders. He understands that his mental and emotional state is something he has to actively manage, and that having the right support system is crucial to that process. He specifically praised the rookie class and stressed how important it's been to have teammates who can check in on him during tough times and say, "Nah, that's not you. Get back to being yourself." He values positivity, encouragement, and people who speak life into him. And when he gets that, he's able to play at his best, seeing the game the way he sees it, with clarity and confidence. This gives us a crucial insight into the kind of environment Sanders needs to thrive. He's essentially telling us in plain language that he needs a culture where he can feel supported and connected, where he could be himself, emotionally and mentally, and get the kind of positive reinforcement that fuels his game. And by saying this, he's also subtly suggesting that maybe this hasn't always been the case this season. The relationships, the team culture, the environment, perhaps they haven't consistently been what he needed them to be. The most telling critique of the current situation, though subtle, came when Sanders reflected on the past year. He mentioned wishing that he, the coaching staff, and the team could have been more personal with each other, that they could have formed deeper, more meaningful connections. He shared a moment when one of his teammates, Quan, came over to his house during a tough time to simply talk with him and speak life into him. Sanders expressed how thankful he was for that kind of presence, just someone being there for him, encouraging him. That moment wasn't just about football. It was about the kind of human connection that Sanders feels has been missing at times this season. That's a powerful message, one that speaks to both the personal and professional elements of his journey this year. Sanders' focus on how meaningful it was to have a teammate come over and offer the kind of personal support, coupled with his wish for more of that kind of connection throughout the season, strongly indicates that he didn't feel that same level of personal commitment or connection from the coaching staff. That's a significant issue. When your franchise quarterback openly expresses that he wished his coaches had been more personally involved, it's a relationship problem that goes far beyond just strategy and tactics. Let's connect the dots, because the picture that's forming is pretty telling. Sanders is a young quarterback who thrives on personal relationships, positivity, and people who motivate him. He needs to feel emotionally connected to his teammates and coaches. This season, he's learned a lot about what works for him and what doesn't, what he's good at and where he struggles. While he certainly grew and developed under Kevin Stefanski, he wishes their relationship had been more personal throughout the year, not just reaching that understanding in the final week. He's been facing mental and spiritual battles that affected his performance, and what pulled him through wasn't adjustments from his coaches, but the support from his teammates, who helped him rediscover his confidence. This all points to a quarterback ready for a fresh start, one who now knows what he needs to succeed and may not have found all those elements in Cleveland's current setup. The big question now is what happens next in Cleveland. Will Stefanski return as head coach, or will the organization decide to move in a different direction and bring in someone who might be a better fit for Sanders' personality and style of play? Based on Sanders' comments, it's pretty clear what outcome he'd prefer, even if he's too diplomatic to say so outright. When a quarterback talks about his head coach in the way Sanders spoke about Stefanski, with a tone of reflection and regret over what could have been, it signals that he's not exactly eager to continue with the same leadership for another season. Instead, it's a sign that he's processed that chapter, learned from it, and is ready to move forward. Now, think about what else Sanders revealed about his on-field situation and how that ties into his future with the coaching staff. He mentioned how, in the second half of the season, they returned to a style of play he's comfortable with, what he knows like the back of his hand. They got back to playing their game instead of forcing a scheme that sometimes didn't match his instincts, slowed down his reads, and didn't allow him to play fast. This is football speak for. The first half's game plan wasn't working for me, but once we simplified and returned to what I'm familiar with, I was able to perform. That's a subtle, but clear, critique of the offense's play calling and management. Sanders is saying that when they let him play his game, when they put him in situations that aligned with his strengths and speed of processing, he could execute. But when they tried to force him into situations that didn't fit his natural style, he struggled. This is exactly the kind of disconnect that leads to coaching changes in the NFL. You've got a young, talented quarterback with a clear skill set and a particular way of seeing the game, and a coaching staff with their own philosophy and system. If those two don't align, something has to give. Either the coach adapts, or the coach has to go. Sanders is clearly signaling that he knows what works for him, what he likes, and what fits his style. If the coaching staff can't or won't consistently put him in positions where he can succeed, if they're more focused on fitting him into their system rather than adjusting their system to leverage his strengths, that's a recipe for continued frustration and underperformance. When you're the Cleveland Browns and you have a potential franchise quarterback, you don't keep a coaching staff that's failing to maximize that quarterback's potential. You go find coaches who can unlock what makes him special. Let's also dive into what Sanders revealed about how he handles adversity, because that's key to his development and what he needs moving forward. He said the biggest lesson from this season was mental, not physical. The mental battle was where he grew the most. The real test came when things weren't going well, when he couldn't see things clearly when adversity hit. Could he rise above it? Could he find his way back? And he believes that last drive proved to him that he could. Sanders is showing us that he's made significant strides in mental toughness and resilience, learning how to fight through tough moments and find a way to persevere. But he's also being clear that he needs the right kind of support to continue that growth. He needs people who know him well enough to recognize when he's struggling and who care enough to pull him aside and remind him of who he is. The big question for the Browns is whether the current coaching staff provides that kind of support system. From Sanders' comments about wishing there had been more personal connection, about only recently reaching an understanding with Stefanski, and about needing people to speak life into him, it's clear that the current environment hasn't consistently given him what he needs. This isn't necessarily a knock on Stefanski as a coach or as a person. Different coaches have different styles and ways of building relationships with players. But if Sanders needs a coach who's deeply invested in personal relationships, who understands his emotional and spiritual needs, and who consistently fills him with positivity, and Stefanski's approach doesn't align with that, then it's a compatibility issue that might not be solvable. The Browns are at a critical crossroads. They've got a young quarterback with immense talent who just led a game-winning drive in the final game of the season and showed real growth in overcoming adversity. But they also have a quarterback who's subtly making it clear that he wished the relationship with his coaches had been different, that he's learned what works for him, and that he needs a specific kind of environment and support system to truly thrive. The question now is whether management will pick up on the signal Sanders is sending and recognize that keeping Stefanski around might not be the right move. Or will they try to make this relationship work for one more year, hoping the understanding Sanders and Stefanski supposedly reached in their recent conversation can serve as a foundation for something better? What stands out here is the timing of the conversation between Sanders and Stefanski. Sanders mentioned they had it this week. So what exactly did they discuss in the lead up to the final game of the season? What understanding did they reach? Did Stefanski admit that he could have handled things differently? Did Sanders lay out exactly what he needs from his head coach moving forward? Or did both of them come to the realization that their relationship hadn't been what it should have been and commit to doing better? Or perhaps it was something else altogether. Maybe even a mutual recognition that this could be their final game together and a desire to part on good terms. The specifics are still unclear, but the fact that Sanders brought it up at all, along with the tone of bittersweet reflection, suggests that it was a significant conversation. It could have been a form of closure. Sanders also pointed out that he knows Stefanski wanted this win, that he wants every win, but that this particular one meant a lot more. Why would this victory matter more than others unless this could potentially be Stefanski's last game as Browns head coach? Sanders seems to be acknowledging that his coach's job may be on the line, adding extra weight to this final game. He probably wanted to send Stefanski off with a win if this was indeed their last game together. It's classy and shows respect for the relationship, despite any frustrations or disconnects that may have existed. But it also deepens the sense that Sanders is already processing this relationship in the past tense, talking about it as something that was rather than something that is. That speaks volumes about how Sanders is approaching the situation moving forward. Now, let's talk about what Sanders said regarding the mental and emotional challenges he faced this season. His words paint the picture of someone who's been through a lot, who's fought battles that most people never see. Sanders described this year as being long, with ups and downs and different feelings. He spoke about the devil attacking through people and circumstances, about being in dark times, and needing others to speak life into him. This is a young man who's been struggling, not just with football, but with real mental and spiritual battles. He's had to learn how to manage his feelings and create his own reality, regardless of the external circumstances around him. That's heavy stuff. And it makes you wonder just how difficult this season has been for him beyond just wins and losses. Was it the pressure of being a high-profile rookie quarterback? The added scrutiny that comes with the Sanders name? Was it struggles with the coaching staff or the system? Or were there personal issues we don't know about? Whatever the cause, it's clear that this has been a year of growth and hardship for Sanders. While Sanders didn't get into the specifics of the spiritual battles and dark times he faced, he made it clear that they were real and significant, and that they affected his performance and mental state. The fact that he needed teammates to come to his house during those tough moments to speak life into him suggests this wasn't just about football frustrations. This was something deeper, something personal that required genuine intervention from people who care about him as a person, not just as a player. This context is crucial for understanding what Sanders needs moving forward. He's not just looking for a coach who can teach him how to read defenses or improve his footwork. He needs a coach who understands the mental and spiritual aspects of the game, who can recognize when a player is going through something beyond the field, and who can provide or facilitate the kind of support Sanders needs to stay in a healthy mental and emotional space. Not every coach is equipped for that. Not every coach sees that as part of their job. Some are more focused on the X's and O's, the tactical side of the game, and expect players to manage their personal struggles with their own support systems. But if Sanders needs a coach who's more involved in a holistic sense, someone who can speak life into him and help him reconnect with himself, that's a specific kind of coach. And not every great football mind fits that mold. The Browns need to ask themselves whether Kevin Stefanski is that kind of coach for Sanders. Based on what Sanders said about wishing their relationship had been more personal sooner and only recently coming to a real understanding, it doesn't sound like Stefanski naturally operates in that space. That doesn't make him a bad coach. It just might mean he's not the right coach for Sanders at this stage in his development. If the Browns are serious about building around Sanders as their franchise quarterback, they'll need to prioritize finding the right coach who aligns with what Sanders needs, rather than trying to make him adapt to a coach whose style and approach don't fit his needs.